And here on Talkin Fight for another episode of Boxing News Today. And let's start it off with news out of Montreal, Canada, where I at the Tiger have a great fight lined up, including some of our favorites here on Talkin Fight. Let's start off with a couple of Canadians who are on the bill. Steve Claggett, KG veteran from the West, I believe Calgary originally. And Mary Spencer, one of our favorites here ever since we've been on the air with Talkin Fight. We have talked about Mary Spencer, a former Canadian Olympian who started her pro career, I think, back in 2021, and is sporting right now a 7-2 record. She's going off tonight, I believe, in Montreal against Sonia Drawling. As a good Canadian, I hope she wins that fight, as well as Steve Claggett. Anyway, fighting out of Montreal, originally though born in America, Erik Bazinyan. He's facing Billy Godoy. That's a good battle. Let's have a quick look at Erik's undefeated, 31-0, 22 knockouts, and he surged through the rankings in recent years, breaking into the top 5 of each federation. He's currently ranked number 2 in the WBA, number 3 in the WBC, number 3 in WBO, number 4 in the IBF. And he's engaged. He had three bouts in 2023. Each pushed him to elevate his game. He began the year facing Alantes Fox, fresh from a world championship fight. The match wasn't easy, but Bazinyan's character allowed him to secure a victory in 10 rounds to cap off 2023 strongly. Last October, he triumphed powerfully over Ronald Ellis, knocking him out faster than anyone before, marking his 31st career win. So anyway, he'll start off his 2024 campaign facing the Argentine veteran Billy Godoy. He's 41-7, by the way. No pushover, 20 knockouts, and he's known for his resilience. Good stuff. It's interesting that the Argentine recently withstood John Ryder's charges for 10 rounds, which is no small feat. So it'll be an interesting challenge. Let's have a quick look as we move forward through. If you want to have a quick look. Okay, here we go. Erik Bazinyan, Billy Godoy, Albert Ramirez going toe-to-toe against Artur Ziadinov. Steve Claggett's going up against Marcos Barraza. Mary Spencer's going up against Sonia Drawling, as I said. Avery Duval up against Jesus Adorno. John Rubio going up against Juan Garcia. Wilkins Mathieu up against Oscar Quintana. And Marino Fandera going up against Ricardo Lara. As I said, it's taking place in the Cabaret Casino in Montreal, promoted by Eye of the Tiger and televised on ESPN+. Good stuff. All right. Tijuana's undefeated former world champion, Jaime Munguía, 42-0, by the way, 33 knockouts. Returns, I mentioned this yesterday, returns against former interim world champion John the Gorilla Ryder, 32-6, 18 knockouts out of England, in what will be another big test for the 27-year-old Munguía as he squares off against Ryder this upcoming weekend at the Footprint Center in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's going to be shown live on DAZN. Said Jaime, this is a big challenge, a tough fight, without doubt, a big test. It's obvious that all the pressure's on me, but I'll come out with the victory. This is obviously a hard time, a hard, tough fight for Jaime. I feel he'll be challenged, but this is what it takes to get to the next level and prove we belong with the elite to ask for these big fights, said Munguia's co-promoter Fernando Beltran at Zanfer Promotions. This will be Munguia's first fight ever under the tutelage of Hall of Fame trainer Freddie Roach, as the two wrapped up camp for the first time at Roach's gym, the famed world, the Wild Card Boxing Gym in Hollywood, California. I feel good. I have a good camp. I'm ready and prepared. I've worked hard for this preparation. I'm very happy to be working with Freddie Roach. I've learned new things here. I'm working with someone new. You're going to learn new and different things. The truth is, I am comfortable with him. I definitely will be benefit from his coaching. So this is all anticipation of him beating Matchroom's John Ryder, despite what Eddie Hearn has to say. Marv Nation kicks off 2024 on Saturday, February 10th at the C. Robert Lee Activity Center in Hawaiian Gardens, California, with a card headlined by undefeated blue chip prospect Ernesto Tito Mercado. We've mentioned him many times before here on Talkin Fight. He's sporting a 13-0 record with 12 knockouts, and Mercado will face off against Victoriano Santillan, 11-6, in an 8-round super lightweight fight. The rest of the lineup is Mateus Radcliffe, 6-0, going up against Christian Lorenzo, 6 rounds, super featherweights. Milik Birdsong, 14-1, going up against Isaac Freeman, 5-12, 6 rounds, super lightweights. Juan Estrada Jr., 1-0. Dylan going up against Dylan Alvarado, 2-2, 4 rounds, lightweights. Ray Sean Thomas, undefeated, 6-0 to be announced. Over 4 rounds, he's in the lightweight division. Michael Bracamonte, 8-1, again, his opponent to be announced, 6 rounds, featherweights. On Andy Beltran, 6-0, undefeated, against an unannounced yet fighter opponent, 6 rounds, featherweights. And rounded out, Joseph Abdi, 3-0, 4-round super lightweight, and Manuel Turcado taking on Dylan Nagoyan, and both fighters making their pro debut. So some good stuff out of California with the return of Tito Mercado. Oh, yes. Great story out of it's unconfirmed, but it's a great story. Let's check it out. We've all been waiting for this news, so here it is. And it is great news for fight fans the world over. The biggest light heavyweight fight that can be made, in fact, one of the biggest fights in recent years, regardless of weight class, has a working date. Yes, Artur Beterbiev up against Dmitry Bivol for all the marbles at 175 is heading towards a June 1st date, according to Dan Raphael. We get this story out of boxing247.com. The fight will take place in, yes, you guessed it, Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh. Beterbiev, unbeaten, the reigning WBC, WBO, IBF light heavyweight champ, wants to fight Bivol, unbeaten, and the reigning WBA boss. And it wants to fight equally as much, by the way. Now, as Raphael writes, there's no impediments that could throw a spanner in the works as far as getting this fight over the line. It really does seem as though what the powerful money men in Saudi Arabia want, they get. And June 1st, a Saturday, the massive card in Riyadh that will be topped by Anthony Joshua against Francis Ngannou is taking place on Friday, March 8th. Is not all that far away. Nothing signed yet, at least not as far as both sides go. Ed Hearn did say, just after Beterbiev had crushed Callum Smith, that the fight was signed from their side. Hearn, of course, working with Bivol. But things sure are looking good for us fight fans. This is going to be a heck of a fight. Fans will have a tough time splitting these two magnificent fighters in the days leading up to the fight. Indeed, so will the bettors. Indeed, picking a winner here is as tough as it gets. Pure puncher Beterbiev against pure puncher Bivol. I mean, who do you like? Let's hear those comments. In addition to this fight seemingly set, super fight. Indeed, fingers will, of course, remain crossed until an official confirmation announcement. It's likely the Saudis will put together a stack supporting card for June, as they have done before, and will again on February 17th. That's when Tyson Fury goes up against Alexander Usyk, supporting by an excellent undercard. And as I said before, March 8th, AJ versus Ngannou, again, with a great undercard. Anyway, Beterbiev or Bivol, or if you prefer Bivol, Beterbiev, who's the A side? Doesn't really matter to me. It's going to be a great fight. Doesn't need any undercard to ensure a sellout, that's for sure. The fight is that good and that tough to pick a winner. Let's hope. Anyway, that brings us to another interesting comment made by journalist Thomas Hauser with respect to pay-per-view and the Saudi money. And again, this is being reported on boxing247.com. Hauser believes that boxing is now growing due to the best fights being put on pay-per-view, which targets hardcore fans but fails to create new fans. Hauser says that the Saudi money that is being pumped into boxing is helping a few select promoters and their fighters, making them rich, but not growing the sport. These are pay-per-view events, and casual fans aren't going to watch if they've never seen these fighters on non-pay-per-view. And many of our older veteran matchmakers and promoters and managers who we've had on Talkin Fight over the years have said the exact same thing. Anyway, Hauser notes that Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou is taking place during an afternoon on a Friday for U.S. fans, which means the match doesn't register with Americans if it's being targeted at the British audience. True enough. The promoters and the fighters that are insisting on putting their best fights behind a paywall are ultimately stunting the sport and their fighters because they create new fans if they're able to see the boxers on non-pay-per-view. according to Hauser. Yeah. I look at the perspective of boxing in the United States, and boxing is certainly suffering here in the States, he said. It's much more popular in the UK and in other parts of the world, as we've often said on Talking Fight, such as Africa, Asia, Australia, indeed Canada. But when people talk about 2023 being a great year for boxing, I don't think so at all, because most of the fights that people wanted to see were behind a paywall. In the United States, at least very few people saw them. And as we've discussed, the pay-per-view numbers on what were anticipated as being big fights were indeed not attracting the numbers on pay-per-view as were expected. Hauser continues, the fact that Joshua Nagano is being contested on a Friday afternoon, a workday in the United States, not in the evening, in the afternoon, tells you where that fight registers in the United States today. So you have to get into the mainstream, and I think you have to do that by the best fighting the best, but also having fights that are available without behind a paywall. That's how you grow the sport. Now, there is a lot of Saudi money coming to the sport, he says. A handful of promoters and a handful of fighters are going to get rich on that. Yes, we've talked about that before too. I don't know that it's going to grow the sport. You're preaching the choir, targeting the hardcore boxing fans, not the casuals. Hauser doesn't say which promoters and fighters are getting rich from the Saudi money, but we all know who those people are without a doubt. And as I've said, boxing in general as an industry can certainly push its borders beyond the United Kingdom and the United States by targeting the many great fighters that are emerging out of these other foreign countries, certainly foreign to US and UK boxing fans, such as those fighters that are fighting in Japan and Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, great young fighters coming out of those countries, not to mention Mexico, not to mention South America, not to mention Central America. Several nations across the Caribbean might be put into that bracket as well as the many, many great countries in Africa that are producing fantastic fighters. All of them, okay, not all, most of them being ignored. So Hauser puts up a few good points about pay-per-view and the impact of Saudi money, making the rich richer, and I guess the poor poorer. Right, that's it for me today here on Talkin' Fight. Appreciate you joining me. Remember, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, for another episode of Boxing News Today. Thank you.